Now, when someone goes to one of the specific pages for these lists, I probably don't just want to show them JSON, I want to show them some nice HTML. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to change this show.html.erb so that it, well, actually shows the list that we're looking at right now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this controller and I'm going to change this up a bit. So you can see that in this request.params thing, I have this list number key value pair. So if I go to 2, and the list number is 2, that gives me the index of this list inside list.all. So I'm going to save that index to a variable. Index equals request params list number. And let's just make sure that works. Okay, so I see 2. That looks great. All right, so I have a way of getting that index. So now I want to get the list item at that index. So you would think that that would just be list all index. I'll try just rendering this as text. Let's see what that does. All right, so I get this weird error, no implicit conversion of string into integer. The problem here, let me just render this guy again. Notice how this has quotes around it. So by default, this is going to be a string. And Ruby doesn't know how to use a string as an index. So we need to tell it, hey, don't use this as a string, instead use it as an integer. You may remember the way of doing that is to put .to_i at the end of your string. So now with this done, there I go. I get list 3, go to 1, I get list 2, 0 is list 1, yada, yada, yada. Now there's no HTML on this page, so what I want to do now is I want to take this list item and I want to make it show up in the show page. I want it to go into this HTML. You may remember from before that the way we make data go into a view from the controller is by using instance variables. That's what we were doing up here in the index. And then in this index view, you can see I'm using the same instance variable here. We're going to do the same thing in this show method. I'm going to say at list equals list.allIndex. Notice that I have a local variable and an instance variable here. Again, not every single thing in a controller has to be an instance variable. You can use local variables, no problem at all. And in fact, most of the time you should use local variables. The only things that should be instance variables are variables that you want to be shown in your view. This, I believe, is all I need to do in the controller. Now, if I go back to this view, I'm going to have list and then Cthulhu or clown hats with an equal sign at list. And I think that's it. There we go. Now I get list 1. If I go back here, list 2, list 3, and list 4. There we go. So again, this is the beauty of the backend. Your users have no idea that there are these clown hats in here. As far as they can tell, you actually did create a different piece of HTML for every single list that you have. They don't know that you're just using a template and swapping out little pieces of that template depending on the list that we're looking at. So that's pretty neat. That's really the whole purpose of the backend is hiding how you insert data into your HTML and make all this stuff reusable. One more thing to keep in mind, just because I see people getting tripped up on this a lot, whatever this variable is called, if this is wombat, then it will also need to be wombat over here. That works perfectly fine. You can see that this page is still showing up perfectly fine, but these variables have to match. And it's only going to be accessible in here if it's an instance variable. If it's not an instance variable, then you will not be able to access it. This is going to tell me undefined method wombat. So I'm going to change it back to an instance variable. Now it's working again. And now I'm going to name it properly, which is at list. And there we go. So in this step, we were dynamically creating a page for each list.